Hello, I'm Giles Edwards with 366 Weird Movies, and I am talking this morning here in the US or this afternoon over in England with the director of Undergods. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Chino Moya, writer and director of Undergods, and I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah, I was very glad that I was able to organize this on such short notice, and wonderful cat for me for the end of the virtual Fantasia Film Festival that's been going on. And your movie obviously focuses on, not just touches on, a number of apocalyptic and semi-apocalyptic things. In your director's statement, you even remarked it was perhaps somewhat appropriate that something like a pandemic would descend upon the globe just as this was going to be released. Now, in regards to this particular film, which takes place in a near future, yes?
Yes, sort of near alternative future. Yeah. There's a number of almost dimensions and planes and periods, but yeah, it's a slightly undefined period. Some of it reflects, it's a bit of a mirror of our 21st century. Other is some kind of potential alternative history, apocalyptic disaster, and another of the story takes place in a fictional late 70s Central European city, but all the times are a little bit diffused and everything. I didn't want to be very, very specific when I was building those worlds in terms of being very faithful to specific period, but like create a slightly blurry feeling when it came to the context, and especially when the placing in time of the stories.
Yes, certainly. The now of the film, I guess you could say, are those two drivers in their van. They're, act as, bookends to the various segments, and, obviously open and close the movie in their entirety. They're driving around this wasteland, which I did some reading. You found that bit of burnt out city was at Belgrade.
Yes, and Belgrade and a little bit of Estonia, which weirdly enough, I went to see Tenet. That was my first ever cinema experience since March. And Charlie was watching Tenet. I was like, wow, those are the locations of Undergods. So they shot in one of the biggest action scenes of Tenet. Happens in one of the of these apocalyptic locations is in Undergods. So obviously we did a lot of post and we transformed what is an actual highway in Tallinn, Estonia, into this more apocalyptic place.
Oh, but yeah, that broken bit of road there that has the wonderful overhead shot.
Yeah, there's some kind of bridge.
Yep.
The shot that you see at the very end, there's the camera pans up and reveals these very tall buildings and this sort of highway with a lot of perspective. They shot a lot of, and then there was another shot at the very beginning that we also shot there, and it was weird, like Sally, to see all that location without the post that we did, and still look great in Tenet. Obviously, it was very, very different, but it was such a surprise, and in a way, a pleasant surprise. Yeah.
No, well, definitely that set the post-apocalyptic mood nicely, and I quite like the fact that that segment is necessarily the future, but it obviously looks the most technologically clapped out of any of the three segments, even the one veering back to that kind of nebulous 50s through 70s European thing with the story of the merchants family.
Yeah.
So definitely is a nice variance of tone, as you said just now, and also in your director's statement, how you have been influenced by the looks for different eras and different directors. I'm wondering, for the sake of our listeners and viewers, if you might expound a little bit on filmmakers that have influenced you.
Well, to be honest, and I think maybe this is a good starting point, there's at least 30 movies on your selection of your 366 selections who had heavily influenced Undergods. And I was like going through them and like, wow, I think feels that either like I've known, I've been in your website before, by the way, and I love it.
Oh, thank you.
And so it's something I've been, and then yesterday I was like, oh, let's look at this, let's see how many of, I think except of a few, 2 or 3, I think most of the movies that the majority of the movies that had influenced Undergods, and the majority of the movies that I said with the crew and casters as references are actually part of your 366.
Oh, well.
And the influences are very different. I mean, it goes from some kind of more obvious references as Stalker, like Tarkovsky's Stalker, which is a clear reference when it comes to that sci-fi section, which, by the way, Tallinn, where we shot, the rail track scenes of Stalker were shot in Tallinn.
Oh. Okay.
I went there, obviously, when we were scouting. I didn't know that. I was scouting, and suddenly they said, like some of the scenes in Stalker was shot here. Well, actually, some of the most amazing scenes was like, wow, I just need to go to that location now. Unfortunately, everything was cleaned up, and there was some kind of plate saying Tarkovsky shot here, and now it was a modern. They kept some of the elements, but it was good, at least, to feel that I was shooting in not far away from where Tarkovsky shot. So that was definitely one. Then obviously another, Teorema by Pasolini, obviously is the thing of the visitor and the family being destroyed by the presence of this unwanted, or like this visitor who somehow brings all the problems of these dysfunctional families to the surface, and ends up ultimately sort of destroying them. So obviously Teorema, and not only Teorema in the concept, but also I use it a lot, especially for the story of the middle, as visual references. One of my main references to build the world, especially the house of that merchant, was the house of the factory owner of Teorema.
Okay.
Then Videodrome just doesn't get any better than Videodrome. And I love the fact of how I actually watched it 2 days ago again. It's a movie that I watch as much as I can. Obviously, sometimes I need a bit of gaps because it feels that it's too recent. But I watched it again and recently, like 2 or 3 days ago. And I think it's this idea of like this kind of see the real worlds in which seamlessly there's some kind of supernatural or extraordinary events are happening. And that, I think, Videodrome is so amazing on that. Yeah. It's so amazing in the fact that all this strange stuff happens, and it's blended seamlessly in this sort of, in this 1980s Toronto, and in this world of this Max Wren, of this guy who runs this small TV station, but how all these very bizarre, surreal, weird things happen in the movie, and how seamlessly are embedded in the movie, and how amazing Cronenberg is at that. So I definitely look at that in that how to incorporate strange weird events into this like normality, and how to make them work. And then even Institute Benjamenta, it's an amazing, when it comes to world building, when it comes to creating an alternative, dreamy reality, a reality that is a reality in its own. Same with obviously Razorhead. Like, there are movies who I love, of how much they create these alternative realities, alternative worlds, also that they have no explanation, which is something that I wanted to do in Undergods. A lot of times through various process of the development, the financing, I could see that some people were asking or requesting somehow, or maybe asking for some explanation, some justification of the world, so to explain the rules or to explain why, so that they could be more accessible for the audiences. But in a way, I just didn't. I wanted to be more Videodrome and more Eraserhead, more in that sense that there's no explanation, there's nothing. Same as another massive cult hit, which is obviously it's impossible to avoid, which is Possession, and which is almost one of
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, there are definitely 2 points where I can tell you didn't bow to people's demands to have it make a lot of sense. When you're wrapping up the first story with the visitor and there's that violent encounter in the elevator, at the same time the superintendent is giving the tour of the new building to this father and daughter, we find out moments later, oh, well, despite this encounter, they decide to move in anyway, because you see them in their new flat there and he starts telling the story. And then at the end of that, when his story segues into the sort of bookend reality with the van drivers just coming in that alleyway with the fusion of the dream, the narrative, and whatever the actual reality might be, it definitely is a very blurry, almost no barrier between the two of them.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, you stood by your guns there, and that's obviously fine by people like us here. Obviously, it's a dark movie. You know, the three stories are all sad to tragic, all taking place in this, you know, soulless modern reality. And as far as I was able to see, there were two bright spots. One was the father and daughter scenario, because you could actually sort of see you know, a love between the two of them, and they had a, you know, a real, you know, normal seeming relationship that seemed generally happy. You know, he's telling her the story and all that. I thought, as the only kind of bridge that was up tempo, was there a reason you chose the father and daughter as the sort of means for that?
Yeah, there was always the function of that mini story, or this kind of in between story, was definitely, we always wanted a little bit of warmth. Like that was the almost the only moment of warmth, the only moment of like characters who actually don't have as many flaws, who actually are like loving characters and characters who cared for each other, and this little glimpse of something else that was not this self-centeredness and this characters too kind of withdrawn and too filled with fear and insecurities, and yeah, that was the moment that we wanted to make those two kind of likable and characters who they seem kind of, and also create a slightly warmer kind of a few minutes of warmth within the rather coldness of the rest of the film. Yeah.
And speaking of coldness, I took the liberty of doing a little bit of research for this. I watched your music video for St. Vincent's Digital Witness, which I understand was highly regarded back in 2014. Rolling Stone had a number of good things to say about it. And having watched your film, the third section in the factory floor parts had definite parallels with the Digital Witness music video. How long have you had that vision of that particular kind of creepy clinical production setting?
I have to say, I mean, I always like this. I have to say, I've learned through music videos, I've learned a lot. And definitely St. Vincent was making that video helped me open up sort of new kind of route, new visual route of a less decayed and less worn out kind of dilapidated kind of world, and to work with a cleaner, more geometrical and colorful palette, and definitely, yeah, definitely that video was the one that helped me a lot to open up and to branch out into other kind of visual sort of world, which I would like to explore more. And yeah, I think that definitely was with that video. I've done a little bits of that in previous, more like commercials and things. I like colors and playing with colors, but it was through that video that I've realized this other form of utopia, dystopia, kind of, that it was brighter and colorful, and that's something that I explore a little bit, as you well pointed out in that factory, and I would love to explore more. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if it was the longest one, but it seemed perhaps the most profound. That third segment. Do these separate segments have informal titles by any chance, or are they just? It's like there's the first one with the visitor, then there's the second one with the merchant and his daughter, and then there's the third one with the husband coming back from, the years in forced labor. It seems to me that you probably have plenty more stories that you would potentially fit into that kind of construct.
Yeah, there was actually one that we ended up killing because it was too long. The script otherwise was too long, and it had to do with a therapist, and it was a therapist who got a lot of people coming to see him, and he will get into dreams. The people will start telling him their fears and dreams, and will jump into their actual dreams and fears, and the idea was to film all these sort of nightmares that these people had, which would have been amazing, but obviously the movie would have been maybe too long, and obviously the budget would have gone up.
Oh, yeah.
But because we have to kill it, in one of the many rewrites I did of the script, I ended up incorporating a little bit of that character in a different way, but the character of the therapist, it was different from the one that was originally on the page, but I still have the figure of the therapist, and that's what that character came from.
Is that the ego mantras guy?
Yes. Yeah.
The ponytail gentleman. Yeah, and also from the narrative structure, I mean, the whole thing, that narrative, dreams as narrative, is very heavily written into the K and Z characters in the van as well. So would it have been like a variant of that, or just was that kind of putting that lost story into the movie?
Yeah, I think it would have been linked. I think it's somewhere in between. So I think initially the K and Z characters were only, I also in a very early stage of the film, they came into the elevator when we see Ron that has died in one of the early versions of the script. K and Z also came into that building, but they were male nurses. Suddenly they were dressed as modern male nurses, and they carried but then again we took that out, and I think that these therapies came right after that moment. But the script went through a lot of rewrites, and a lot of it took like 3 or 4 years of the very initial version. It was completely surreal. It was very, very not grounded at all. It would have been a way less accessible movie, and I think it was very, which I'm glad at the end I was pushed to make a bit more sense of the stories. But the very, very initial version, the connections were even looser, and a lot of the stories were hardly grounded on anything, which is pure dreams and nightmares.
Mm-hmm. To segue perhaps into, well, not political, but certainly socio-political, one theme I found with each of the stories as a catalyst, and you mention it, is that in each of the scenarios, lives are upended by the arrival of a stranger. And it's after the arrival of this stranger that pretty much everything that they had established in their lives falls entirely apart one way or another. Now, is that you suggesting that civilization, or at least developed world Western civilization, is kind of one weird experience away from collapse itself? Because I know there's definitely parallels with these kinds of stories and the state of affairs
Yeah,
globally.
no, definitely was very strangely enough when I wrote the script, the first ever draft. It was we were very far away. Like something like Brexit or Donald Trump would have,
Oh,
or
wow.
this pandemic would have sound absolute science fiction to anyone. It would have been impossible for anyone to think that in a few years' time we would have someone like that in power, or some kind of decision like Brexit would have been made by
Mhm.
the British public, or like we would have been all confined and wearing masks and not being allowed to get out of our houses. All of that would have sound absolute science fiction. And when I wrote that, when I wrote the very early, when I wrote this script, none of that was, yeah, that didn't even exist. So weirdly enough, the more those things started happening, the more they helped the film. Weirdly enough, Brexit and Trump helped a lot with the financing, because a lot of our financiers, they understood more about the points of the movie and the thing of this white middle class, and having this collection of three white middle class characters as the main protagonists, and why. And then weirdly enough, when the movie was almost even finished, now we got this pandemic, which again made even more relevant. So it was a complete chance that those things happened. But yeah, there was definitely, I wanted to do something about the decline of the white male and the decline of the utopias created by the white male, and how all of, from communism to fascism to neoliberalism, all of those are falling apart, or they fell apart, or now they are currently on the brink of falling apart. So yeah.
Well, I guess, do you have any hopes for a better future? Do you see any shoots of that? Any plans on writing something that will become prophetic in a good way, perhaps?
Um, I hope, yeah. Like I did a comic book with something like a couple of years ago with, and I wrote it and someone did the illustrations, and some of the stuff also happened. Something that was in, and she was like, "Wow, this is a bit scary. Like maybe we should change the ending because we don't want." At the ending, the protagonist dies, and I was like, "I don't want this to happen to us." Something. I said, "Well," so then I started thinking, well, maybe I should try to work in a rom-com or something for the next, so maybe, but I don't think I have any rom-com ideas.
Well, I'm trying to.
But I should, yeah, I'm working on on a few other things. They are maybe not as hopeless as Undergods, but yeah, they are definitely not the most, yeah, there's a bleakness to them, but yeah, maybe, yeah, there's something with a strong love story in slightly bleak
Mhm.
environment that I'm working on, and something else. So yeah, let's hope. Yeah, but I think maybe something brighter will come out for it.
Yeah, well, I know that from the Discord chat with the virtual Fantasia thing, that this Undergods has been very well received by the press people I've spoken to, and the various fans milling about in the virtual lobby. And obviously the pandemic has set things a little askance in regards to distribution and all. But are you hopeful that Undergods will perhaps open some more doors for you? I understand you already had your career with commercials and music videos, but do you feel that this might have given you a foothold you want?
I hope so. I mean, I got into this job because I wanted to make movies. I mean, I like doing commercials and music videos. That was never the ultimate goal. So I hope this will help me to get off the ground my next project as soon as possible. Obviously, the conditions are not the best right now, and but let's hope that we get to a slightly more normal situation soon, and we can resume productions as they used to be. And if not, maybe I'll have to adapt some of the stuff I'm working on, or maybe write something new which involves less traveling, less extras,
Right.
less, and is more doable within the current climate. But yeah, I really hope I can jump into the next one as soon as possible.
There are, yes, a couple more questions. I really, really like K and Z, even though they have no names. They seem like swell guys. They actually, to get back to movies at 366 that we've written reviews of, they very much reminded me of Terry Gilliam's Brazil, because that's obviously a dystopian movie, but everyone is being as cheerful as their horrible circumstances allow. And K and Z are going around in their van collecting corpses, but seeming to be just looking at it as a, work a day kind of thing and enjoying each other's friendship. And I thought that was the second humanizing element that in conjunction with the father and daughter relationship. And I thought it was really refreshing to see this horrible world they're in, and they're kind of like smiling and drinking rum and driving around town. Are they? I was wondering where those characters may have come from.
Yeah, no, definitely I wanted them to be, since they live in the bleakest of all worlds, I want them to be cheerful. And also the fact that because they don't live in this consumerist society as most of the other characters in Undergods, they don't have nothing to lose. They live in a physical world, and they do physical things. They do a physical job too, and they don't have the comforts and the of modern society, and somehow that makes them a bit freer. I always imagine them as pirates or bandits or something like that. People who are free, who live, who roam around. They don't have anything to lose and everything to gain, and they just enjoy life as much as they can within this very bleak scenario. And maybe going back to another film reference, I think there was a Miracle in Milan, um, the Sika film. I think it was great in that there was these people living in these slums in Milan and living in these very precarious conditions, but they were very cheerful and they were very kind of life affirming characters, and I really liked that from that movie, and I wanted to capture that idea of like these people living in the bleakest of all conditions and still being cheerful, while some of all the characters in Undergods, they have comfort, security, and financial stability and food in their fridges, and still they are very unhappy. And so I wanted them to have that contrast with the main families of Undergods in that sense, and be more likable and warm characters.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely they had the happiness that all the others lacked. I guess I'm also kind of hopeful. Um, I suppose there's not really much of a chance we'll ever see those characters again in anything you do in the future, because I think they were great sort of commentators and storytellers actually.
Yeah, no, I would love to, and the conversations I had with Sophie, the producer, we always thought it would be great to do some form of spin-off to incorporate those two in something else, because they were, yeah, interesting people, and interesting people that could maybe just create or bring other stories, or generate other movies, or Undergods the sequel at one point, who knows. Yeah.
Well, I do have one final question I like to pose everyone that I interview. If you'd care to tell us all your hometown and if there's a restaurant there you can recommend.
I'm from Spain and I live in London. As a Spaniard living in the UK, we always have funny feelings about British food, especially Southern Europeans. But I have to say, in London, there's actually some great places to eat, but maybe not as many as in Spain. There's one place really near my house that it's just very simple. There's nothing special about it, but it just came to mind. It's called Biang Biang Noodles, and they do this Biang Biang noodles. It's a Chinese place where they make their own noodles. It's quite a cheap, just, yeah, affordable place, and definitely not a fancy joint at all. And they do these brilliant, really good noodles, and it's around Whitechapel, near the Whitechapel Gallery, in between Spitalfields and Whitechapel in East London. So I definitely recommend it. Yeah.
And you're from Madrid, yes?
I'm from Madrid. Yeah. And there, I think there's plenty of great restaurants.
From what I've heard, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, well, thank you very much for arranging to speak with me. So thank you on behalf of 366. It was a great movie. I'm looking forward to it becoming generally available because considering, you know, the influences that you mentioned, it's exactly the kind of thing I know our readers will want to be able to see sooner rather than later. So thank you very kindly for talking with me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, and thanks for your website. I think it's an amazing. And I'm gonna go through because I spotted quite a few that I don't know about.
Oh,
So
well,
I'm
we'll be
gonna
happy
check
to
them.
see you in the comments if you care to make any remarks there. That would be
Yes, and there's one that I thought I was missing. Angst. I don't know if that is
Oh,
like angst.
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 Yes, I actually reviewed that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was yeah, it was like what, from the early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, that's a good one. Yeah, so that's hidden in there somewhere. I
Nice.
haven't certified it yet, but I'm hoping it's a matter of time. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a brilliant list. Like, congratulations, not only congratulations and thanks for putting that into the world, because we need more lists, more websites like that. So
Well, thank you very much.
yeah, yeah.